Today is the day, everybody. We are ready. You two, do your job. Welcome to the FOMC. We are early for the rate decision that we're going to be showing live to you guys. And also the press conference, of course. So we got a lot that we're going to be talking about. There's so much going on in Washington, D.C. right now. Earlier today, there was the Intel leaders, talking before Congress, and then we have the DHS confirmation as well. I think that ended, and then we have your favorite, some of your Dems talking. So, welcome everybody. How we doing? Drop a like, subscribe to the channel. My NFA as always, guys. Let's go ahead and get everybody involved, and so happy that you're here. Here, I give you this guy. Welcome.
In order to place the bills on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I would object to further proceeding en bloc.
Objection having been heard, the bills will be placed on the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, there are so many issues Senate Republicans could be working with us on this week that Americans actually care about. Republicans could focus on whether Americans can afford groceries, or on lowering health care premiums, or bringing down the child care costs, or fixing our power grid. But what have MAGA Republicans chosen to focus on this week? Voter suppression. That is what the Republican Senate is wasting our time on. Pushing a voter suppression bill that most Americans do not support, a bill that appeals to only the most fringe element of the MAGA base. If this is the path our Republican colleagues want to take, Democrats are ready. We will hold the line to ensure the forces of voter suppression do not win the day. We will debate this bill for as long as Republicans want, because the more time we spend on this bill, the more Senate Democrats will expose it for what it really is. I heard our senator from Utah last night talk on the floor, and he talked, times I heard him, about having an ID when you go vote. This SAVE Act is not about voter ID. In fact, the original bill didn't even have a sentence about voter ID, and they had to put it in at the last minute so it could meet their subterfuge argument. Democrats support common sense voter ID. But this bill is not that, not at all. So don't lie and make it seem like that's the purpose of this bill, because it isn't. It's just a sentence that was added at the last minute so they could engage in this subterfuge.
This guy.
This is suppression, a MAGA power grab that could disenfranchise more than 20 million American citizens. Because what's the core of the bill? The core of the bill is handing the voter rolls over to DHS, putting them through an algorithm designed by Moj and Musk.
Cowboy says, hello, as a minor, thank you for showing me. Now I'm financially free. I can make more than my job. Oh, brother. Kudos.
But the evidence is almost no illegal immigrants vote.
Yeah, I just got my paycheck minutes ago.
And on an experiment in a county in Missouri, more than half the people knocked out were American citizens using this algorithm. Is that what the senators from Missouri or any other state want? Their legitimate citizens being knocked off the ballot, being purged, and then not knowing about it until you show up to...
As soon as we pass and as soon as it becomes law, the Save America Act, we can now put our attention to Clarity Act. Donald J. Trump posting hours ago, when will too late Powell cut rates? Right now, Washington, D.C., there's so much going on. Trump is off to Delaware, Doba Airport, Doba Zone, to, welcome the unfortunate, event of what happened in Iraq. The 6 airmen passing away because of the crash. So Trump is heading to Delaware right now. He's coming back right after that, to my understanding. J.D. Vance is in Michigan speaking. I was eating earlier today, having my lunch, and I was looking at all the news. It is what I really like to do. I don't know. Am I weird? Who knows, guys? But I really like what I'm doing. I'm super thankful that you guys are here with me. Welcome aboard. Chuck Schumer, guys. This guy, the Dems. Like, honestly, dude, 260 plus thousand families, American families, are not receiving a paycheck because you have stopped DHS funding. Dude. Crazy.
Vote on election day, and you say to the person at the election facility, well, I voted at this booth I voted at this place for 20 years. I've used the same ID. Well, you were knocked off. And to get back on is very onerous and very difficult. It's harder to re-register under this bill than it is to purchase a firearm. It's absolutely crazy. And it's all based on one fact, that Donald Trump has lied that our elections are rife with voter fraud. We know that's bull. Even the Wall Street Journal, no friend of Democrats, certainly no friend of mine, said in an editorial yesterday, the Wall Street Journal said the president's voter fraud claims aren't backed by hard evidence.
We're seeing right now on the TV, Fox has there it is. So Charles is about to speak about, why is the Fed soon Fed makes decisions on interest rates. They're showing the Dow Jones right now, crude oil going spiking, and there's the share FOMC already. We're locked in. You're in the right channel, guys. Oscar Live, how you doing? And welcome. Drop a like, guys. Welcome. Subscribe. Alerts are on. Very happy to see you.
And yet that's what this bill is supposedly all about. I hope every single Republican yesterday read the editorial in the Wall Street Journal, because they may not listen to us from this side of the aisle, but maybe they'll listen to the Journal. The SAVE Act makes voting harder and makes registration much harder for U.S. citizens. For U.S. citizens.
Freaking kidding me, bro. 384? Brother. Not good, not good.
The Journal notes many driver's licenses wouldn't comply, wouldn't qualify. So I ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, do you want to tell your voters, your citizen voters, that if they move and have to re-register, it's much harder?
Cheaper, wow.
I don't think so. The Journal makes another important point. He says the SAVE Act can't save Republicans from voter anger at unpopular policies. Let me say that again. Wall Street Journal editorial page, quote, it can't save Republicans from voter anger at unpopular policies. Even the Wall Street Journal seems to recognize why Donald Trump and MAGA radicals are so obsessed with this bill. They think it will save them from what other looks like a bad November, a November where voters are fed up with Trump's policies. That's what's going on here. If Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are so worried about November, the answer shouldn't be to take away the vote. It should try to come up with policies that are popular. Rethink their awful policies that have made life more expensive and painful for working people. If Donald Trump and Republicans are worried about November, then maybe they should have focused on lowering costs instead of kicking millions of people off health care. Maybe Donald Trump should not have started an unpopular war in the Middle East with no plan on how to get out. Maybe MAGA Republicans should stand up to Donald Trump's tariffs. A lot of them didn't like them. A headline from AP today read, Trump's tariffs are hurting American manufacturers instead of helping them. That's from the AP. Of course, Trump will say we should get rid of the AP when they don't agree with him. That's another issue. Maybe Republicans should fight against Donald Trump's corruption, his lavish gifts, his pardoning of ultra-rich fraudsters, his administration's crypto get-rich-quick schemes.
Wait a second. He just mentioned us. We are more than that, Schumer. Come on, bro.
his administration's crypto get-rich-quick schemes. But instead of doing any of these things, instead of doing what Americans want Republicans to do, MAGA radicals instead are trying to take away the vote. They want to short-circuit the mechanisms of accountability that underpin our democracy. If MAGA Republicans want to waste this week and beyond on voter suppression, we're happy to have the debate. We're happy to show the American people how radical the SAVE Act is and how out of touch Republicans have become by wasting time on this bill instead of lowering costs like people want. How they're going to, with this bill, disenfranchise millions of their own voters, Republican voters in red states, by doing this bill. On Iran. Well, we're 3.5 weeks into Donald Trump's Iran war. And today the price of Brent crude hit nearly $110 a barrel. Experts say that even if the war ended tomorrow, it would take a long time for prices to come back down. We know oil prices are sticky for going down. When oil prices spike quickly, they tend to fall very slowly. And now central banks are worried that Trump's war is driving up costs not just for energy, but for transportation, for shipping, and other key goods that pass through Middle East. Mortgage rates, after inching down, are moving back.
I agree that, going back to your comment, Tony, of course, I mean, I disagree Melania launch was a success, but just the leader, the minority leader in the Senate for all Democrats, if the only one thing you can say about crypto is that it's just a scheme, Ponzi, and a scam, I mean, you clearly don't know crypto. Like the dollar, like banks and stuff, I mean, they also are not the holiest, right? But in crypto, it's more of, don't be stupid, if not, you're going to lose all your money. But there's so much goodness in cryptocurrency and blockchain. That's why we need people who actually know that technology and they can speak about it. Because if you start by saying, oh, it's just a pure scam, then I don't really think your starting point is fair.
Up. And the worst part is there are no signs the war's going to end tomorrow, next week, or anytime soon. Donald Trump, the old saying is, if you break it, you buy it. Donald Trump's breaking the Middle East. But now he's trying to dodge the cost and leave the American people with the bill. So I will reaffirm again what Democrats have been saying for days. We need cabinet officials to testify because the story from the administration does not add up. This morning, before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard insisted in her prepared remarks that Donald Trump's operation from last year, Midnight Hammer, did in fact, she says, obliterate Iran's nuclear enrichment program. She noted there have been no efforts since then to try and rebuild their enrichment capability. So what gives now, Tulsi? Why did Donald Trump strike Iran again if you say that Midnight Hammer did in fact obliterate the nuclear enrichment program? And of course, nobody wants a nuclear Iran. Why do the American people still not have any clear answers on the goal?
I mean, to me, it just makes total sense, and I'm a nobody. You destroy the nuclear capabilities doesn't mean that doesn't mean that their whole army is not operable. Now, from what we heard from all official sources, the chief of staff, joint chief of staff, the secretary of war, the secretary of state, the president, is that the Navy, the Air Force, army capabilities are decimated. Now, the drone attacks and the missile attacks have decreased by more than 90%. I think that's putting places safer around. I was in Dubai, and now we're not going to Dubai, the token people, because of what's going on in the war. So, to me, I'm a no one, just a talking head on YouTube. You're making that zone safer, although there's obviously this bully, Iran, not the people, just the regime that is really just trying all they can, right? So, guys, to me, it makes sense. I'm like I said, guys, I still don't know many things, but to me, it makes sense to what he was saying right now.
and timeline of this war. Secretary Rubio needs to publicly testify under oath. He must answer tough questions from both sides of the aisle, which there will be, in public. Hegseth needs to testify publicly under oath. The American people deserve to directly hear from them. They deserve answers. They deserve accountability. And they need to hear from the administration about how we're going to get out of this before it's too late. And finally, on Markwayne Mullin, Senator Mullin. He's been testifying before the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs as President Trump's nominee to be the next Secretary of Homeland Security. I will not be supporting Senator Mullin's nomination should it
Shocking. Shocking.
come before the Senate. The problems at DHS, especially at ICE and CBP, run far deeper than who's in charge. What Americans need, far more than just a change in leadership, is a change in policy. Americans demand legislation to rein in ICE and end the violence. But the White House is still refusing to engage on some of the most pressing demands Democrats have called for since day one. We're going to continue to engage the White House and congressional Republicans, but we need them to get serious about responding to the chaos we've seen in too many American cities. If ICE is not reformed and reined in, sooner or later another American citizen is at risk of getting killed. I yield the floor.
Fix it. Whatever issue we have, I believe is the people's voice. And so I'm disturbed about what I'm witnessing. I'm disturbed about an attack on Fulton County and in Maricopa County, Arizona. It troubles me when ICE lands in Minneapolis.
So, welcome, fam. We're going to be hearing from, the decision, right, that everybody right now thinks that it's going to be a pause. Also, right now, David, the legend, former CTO at Ripple, David Schwartz, he always replies, right? Everybody. I mean, I highly suggest you follow him on X so you can take a look at all his responses right now. Earlier today, X was down, by the way. They're trying to implement a new dislike button. So, if you don't like what you see on YouTube, you can always dislike. You're free to do so. But now on X, they're adding it as well. So you're going to see that pretty soon. And here it is. X Uptech rolling out a dislike button. Spam incentives expected to drop over the next 30 days, soon allowing reply restrictions by country or region. So Elon Musk is, telling his people, go ahead and start fixing X. Binance founder CC denies Iran terror ties. So we're going to be hearing from CC. He was speaking at the blockchain conference, I believe, DC1. He got invited, and he was referencing and answering a few things, right? Why not? Why not? China. Oh, baby. We got more. China may soon begin releasing oil from its 1.2 billion barrel reserves. They have way more than the United States. The United States had in the 400 million barrels last time I checked, and they've released 170 something million. So they still have a few more millions, but now it's less, of course. And what we saw earlier today is that oil prices are still increasing. One of the reasons is that Israel destroyed one of the biggest Iran's nuclear gas facilities. So all what I'm telling you guys is what has happening in the last 12 hours or so. So much going on, a lot of news. So you just got to be prepared. And I'm here to keep you in the know. China saw it coming, meaning that they have a lot of oil. I mean, they're in the billions. They're in the billions of barrels. I mean, that is incredible. That is incredible. Someone says, Dr. Options, what's up, brother? China's release is about 2 weeks worth. A little drop in the bucket, big picture. Nice. So I'm happy to see you guys. Welcome. What Jerome Powell says today using one word. Break it. Hodl. Did you say oil? Now, some of the dams are talking right now. The FOMC are starting right now, as you can tell. Schumer was speaking, other Republicans and Dems, they were all talking right now. Pretty cool. I believe the other sessions have ended, which is okay. So they are talking about everything, they're having some time for them to relax and enjoy. If I see another Democrat that we know of, maybe Warren or so, we'll go ahead and put him up. But I saw Chuck Schumer and I'm like, I cannot let that go by. Let me see if I have CC. I saw a video of CC talking, so let me see if I can find it again. There's so much going on a daily basis that I can tell you. In the meantime, you're looking at the price of XRP. Also there, chilling. Here you go. CC replying to what happened. Oh yeah, there you go. The DC blockchain. So I'm sure I'm gonna be able to find it right now. So this is awesome to hear and a huge step for the crypto industry to have this clarity from the SEC. I'll be joining the DC blockchain today. So he already did. So can we watch it live? That'll be pretty cool. Let's see.
And you're known for producing a talented fraternity of staffers. A lot of people in this room are dealing with the government for the first time, and your time is very valuable.
Let's see. Can we find CC's time? Because I know he was... Oh, Gillibrand. Oh, there you go. We got some familiar faces here. Pretty good. Let's see. That's Tom Emmer, of course. Everybody knows Tom Emmer. Oh, who do we have here? Tron founder and Trump supporter, big Trump supporter. Well, he's the #1 Trump coin holder, Justin Sun. He's a Tron founder. So, yeah. Maybe CC. Wait, is that Elon? Oh, he looked like Elon to me. Oh, that's not Elon Musk. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of people. Oh, yeah, we know her. Everybody knows her. Yeah, Lumens. There he is. All right. I want to listen to CC. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one.
To the DC Blockchain Summit. Thank you so much for joining us remotely today.
Well, thanks for having me. I would love to have a join in person, but the travel logistics are a bit trickier right now.
I understand there's a lot going on in the world, and wishing you, your family, all your team, all the people you work with, because I know you have many people across all the ventures you're involved in, nothing but our prayers and safety for them during these very challenging times internationally.
It's gonna be exactly 4 hours.
But we've extended his contract.
Right here.
Your part in that.
Yeah, likewise.
Right.
So
let's do this.
You were at the conference where we stood up and we told everybody we had formed this organization and we were going to be here to represent you. We've come a really long way, and still launching digital asset industry. When you look back at the past 10, 12, 15 years, how do you measure success and how far we've come?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been doing a lot of reflecting recently because I've been working on my stupid book that's supposed to come out in a couple of weeks. So I think we met 12, 13 years ago. Like I also remember very distinctively in the Chicago Bitcoin conference in 2014. You had a panel just before me, and you were talking about BitLicense, and you took the entire audience away. And when I got on stage, the entire audience went with you because BitLicense was the hot topic back then. So I remember that, pretty clearly. So back then, the conferences was like 200 people, right? And then today, the conferences are easily 5,000, 10,000 people, depending on where the venue, etc. Back then, Vitalik was 19 years old. He was only talking about Ethereum. And today, Ethereum is a couple $100 billion asset. So I think the industry have came a long way. In sort of my recollection, like from 2013-ish, the first 5 years, like we were largely ignored. And then the next 5 years, we were fought against quite a lot. Well, basically, there were quite a lot of forces fighting us. But now we're finally being accepted. So right now we see US leading the world with crypto regulations. And the amount of clarity we're seeing day by day, even today, yesterday, we saw that we got more clarity from the US SEC. This is tremendous progress. So now we're finally going mainstream. We're seeing institutional adoption. So there's definitely been some roller coasters, but the industry has come a long way.
Yeah, no, that's for sure, and we're extremely encouraged by the news that was made right here on this stage yesterday about progress in the regulatory landscape to create that legal clarity so businesses can build and operate and investors can invest here in the US markets. You mentioned your book. It's not a stupid book. I know it's coming out soon. You very generously gave me an advance copy, so I've read it. It's your memoir. I will say it is an unbelievably incredible story. It's truly a page turner. I learned so much about you, despite that I've known you for so long, but you shared
20 minutes for the Fed decision, everybody. 20 minutes for us to get a pause. And then after that, we'll get the press conference, right? 2:30 p.m. East, 1:30 p.m. Central.
So many personal stories just about your life, and you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot of hardships personally, professionally, and it's very inspiring just what you've been through, where you've ended up, and how you've continued to keep your integrity and you haven't lost who you are. You really strike me as an incredibly authentic person. You don't fake anything for anybody. You've always been the same CZ, before Binance, before Bitcoin and crypto, to where you are today. So why did you decide to write the book? Tell us a little bit more about what inspired this and what you're hoping people to learn about you as you're getting ready to publish it.
Sure. Well, I started the book when I was in prison, right? So I had nothing to do.
Whoa, that's baller move.
So I thought, the book project will keep me busy. But also, when I thought about my life, right? I'm a normal dude. I'm a normal person. But my life has been a roller coaster, which is
a normal person who is now richer than Bill Gates. Is richer than Bill Gates. Boom.
Quite interesting. So I went from a rural China village to building one of the global leading crypto technology companies. There's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of hard work, but I'm a normal person. So I started flipping burgers at McDonald's for 4.5 Canadian dollars when I was 14. So I think anybody can do what I do. Anybody can go through the process. I'm hoping that by sharing, number one, people understand me better. Number two is hopefully give some more younger entrepreneurs some courage and also some advice. So I just thought it's a normal. I'm a normal person, but my story is actually a bit unnormal.
Yeah, it's an incredible precedent. I mean, where you came from. Coming from a rural village in China, extremely humble roots, to building and launching and successfully operating one of the biggest companies in the industry. it's very inspiring. And I think that will resonate with so many people for years to come, children as well, who come from different areas of the world, who understand that hard work, determination, education, you can do amazing things, and you can change your circumstances if you take control of your own destiny. And I think you represent that. And I think your story, your personal story, gives a really good analogy to the story of crypto, the story of Bitcoin and digital assets. We came from very humble beginnings. You and I were there in some of the very early days, and we faced a lot of scrutiny at the initial start of this entire asset class. That's why we started the Digital Chamber all those years ago, is because there was a lot of concerns and criticism and regulatory activity that was happening, all trying to shut Bitcoin down. And I'm saying Bitcoin because back then it was just Bitcoin. We didn't have crypto and all these other digital assets until much later, and that's where it all started. But we're all one family now today. But one of the major issues we set out to address is after Silk Road and the Mt. Gox issue, the media was saying Bitcoin had died, which it didn't die. They're still saying that, which is, okay, confusing, incorrect, false. And then also that they were painting this narrative that this technology is only good for illicit finances. This is the currency of choice for criminals. And some of those themes keep coming up. So let's talk about the media. What we're seeing in the headlines today. A lot of those headlines are the same kind of headlines we were reading 10, 12 years ago. It's the same game. It's the same story. There is clearly an effort to push a very specific narrative to intentionally provide disinformation, I believe, this is my personal opinion, to try to slow this industry down, try to stifle innovation in the digital asset space. And despite where we are today with having a pro-crypto Congress, a bipartisan crypto Congress, and our first pro-crypto president of the United States, there's still a significant effort to try to push this down. And a lot of it's happening in the media. And it's specifically, a lot of attacks are on you, not just you, but other people too. As someone that's known you personally, I feel like I have whiplash, the things they're saying about you, because I know so much of it just isn't accurate at all. What do you think the media has gotten most wrong about you? What do you think the public, people who haven't had the chance to spend time with you or haven't taken the chance or the time to actually get to know you as a person, what do you think most people don't understand about you?
Sure. I think, number one is the media is kind of divided. The crypto media, I believe, understands me because I spend a lot of time on Twitter. I don't spend enough time with traditional media, which may be where some of the misunderstanding may come from. And we know one or two traditional journalists whose career is about writing negatively about crypto, about meme, about Binance, and maybe even the current administration, because they're pro-crypto. And we also see, I'm not into US politics, but we also see that, multiple times there were declarations on war on crypto by, I guess, the Democrats. So this, it feels like it's their job to attack whatever the Republicans do. That's how the US government set up, it's just two opposing forces. Also, right now, I think the attacks, the negative narratives are a bit more complex in a way. I think there is some rumors that some U.S. Players fear Binance entering the U.S. competition, etc. They may lobby against that, but at the same time, they get lobbied by the traditional banking industry about the stablecoin interest rates, etc. So there's all kind of media angles there. I'm not a media expert, but I think I just focus on the technology. I think that we have seen that the technology itself is very revolutionary and it's very foundational for the future. So whatever the media says, I think there's a lot of stuff they get wrong for various different reasons. I think for me, I just think I personally don't spend enough time with traditional media outlets, and maybe that's something I should do more in the future. But that's not my expertise. My expertise is basically building a platform that people use. And now I'm no longer running Binance, but I'm helping many other entrepreneurs to hopefully do that too. by investments, mentors, etc. So that's kind of what I do. But I think the media angle will change over time, especially that the adoption for crypto continue to increase. As sooner or later, crypto becomes the mainstream, and then whatever else becomes the peripheral. So then the narrative will necessarily have to change.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe you should spend more time with the journalists who just are obsessed with writing about you and saying, things that I know are not true. Anyone that's spent any amount of time with you, I think can very clearly see you're, a generous but also a very kind.
Now I want to shift to Clarity Act, which I'm so sure they're going to talk about it here.
Our industry has been nothing short of incredible. So first I want to thank the both of you for spearheading these efforts. I've worked as a technologist for over 20 years, and I approach the space not as a politician, but from the perspective as a builder. With that framing, let's get into discussion. We've seen a tremendous amount of bipartisan support for digital assets policy, including recent milestones like the passage of the Genius Act and the bipartisan passage of the Clarity Act in the House. What is it that brings both sides of the aisles together on digital assets policy? And on the flip side, what issues have been the most difficult to achieve bipartisan consensus? Whip Emmer, can you please start us off?
Well, I will. And Avery, thank you. Thank you for all you've done, and glad that you're here with Kirsten and I today. First, I won't use that term, bipartisan, when it comes to crypto, when it comes to digital assets. I think bipartisan designates us and them. This is a nonpartisan issue that we're talking about. This is not Democrats and Republicans. This is about Americans. And I think one of the things that you're seeing is an education piece. I got to compliment the senator for all the work that she's done on the Senate side in bringing her members. I bet you had some of the similar experience as members learned about this. They had varying degrees of understanding. And let's face it, human beings, when they don't understand something, tend to fear it. And so it's been an education process. I think there was a transportation bill over in the Senate several years ago that really spurred an education explosion when people tried to, didn't try. The Senate put a tax in that we can argue about the details, but that tax on this community literally woke them up, and they all started getting involved in educating not only House members, but Senate members very quickly. And I think the reason you are now you're seeing the benefits of that. You're seeing the benefits of probably the last decade, maybe in some cases the last 5 to 6 years. People are learning more and more about this space. The industry is getting more and more engaged, showing up in offices, putting faces with the issues that members of Congress didn't understand because they weren't involved. And guess what? You're electing more people that understand it. We've got a vice president who's actually owned a Bitcoin in his life, which I told him, you're the first presidential or vice presidential candidate ever to have owned Bitcoin. This is why I think you're seeing in the House, the Clarity Act had almost 100 Democrats in addition to the Republicans that voted for it. But then the House has been doing this with the exception of Senator and her colleagues, I would say Cynthia Lummis. You two, there are a couple others that have been the real champions from day one over in the Senate side. They've been pushing this rock uphill, and I think it's got momentum now. On the House side, we've got about 7, 8 years of institutional knowledge banging this back and forth. And I just think you're going to see more and more of the nonpartisan. Political issues should not be brought into the digital space. This is supposed to be a space for everyone, regardless of what they believe and what they practice.
Absolutely. Senator Lummis?
No.
So Senator Gillibrand, sorry.
Hello. So I agree with the Congress.
Oops. It happens.
This is an industry that is very appealing to a lot of Americans for a lot of reasons. And because this industry can solve big problems like access to capital, like frictionless ability to send assets and value worldwide, because it is a transformative industry that breaks down barriers to being able to store and send and use value efficiently. It's really addressing a problem of unbanked and underbanked people in America. Over 30% of our population is unbanked or underbanked. And oftentimes communities of color are left out of the traditional financial services industries. And so this industry has uniquely created enormous opportunity for economic growth, for the ability to raise and accumulate capital, and also wealth creation. So I think it's a transformative opportunity for our economy, for our nation. And the reason why I've taken such a strong leadership approach towards it is because I want the United States to be at the forefront of this industry. I want us to have the best regulated markets. So when market participants are deciding, do they want to start their business in America or do they want to start their business in Asia or Europe, they're going to choose us because we are going to have the best industries and best regulated markets for certainty. And that's important to me. We also have massive changes on.
Powell just called. He met with Brad Garlinghouse prior to this decision, and well, he said to expect the unexpected. It will keep us in suspense.
On the horizon with regard to the rise of AI, that we need to be able to show that we can regulate industry well so that it thrives, so that it can continue to grow, so that it can continue to solve big problems, and do so on a bipartisan or nonpartisan basis. I've had a wonderful partnership with Cynthia Lummis. She and I started working on this about 4 years ago because her state, Wyoming, was the birthplace of a number of very important different crypto companies, and so is New York. New York has always been the center of the world financial markets. We want to maintain that leadership, and we've had the ability through DFS to have crypto licenses for a long time, the BIT license, and so we already have leadership and groundwork done in New York that we wanted to continue to build on. So it's been very important. It's extremely important that we keep it nonpartisan, and I'm optimistic that the work we're doing right now in market structure will take the excellent work of the House and bring it a few steps forward to continue to build on the past successes of what we can do on a nonpartisan basis in Washington.
And thank you again for all the work you both have been doing. In particular, though, the New York thing helps us a lot because we've got an office in New York with a large number of people that are building financial services in that state. We've heard that negotiations are continuing in the Senate over market structure legislation. What do you think it'll take to get market structure past this Congress, and how likely do you think that is, Senator Childebrand?
I'm very optimistic that this bill will come to fruition in the next several weeks. I'm optimistic we will have a markup in the bank.
Yes. Yes.
Banking committee shortly, and I'm hoping that if we can build on a bipartisan markup, that we can then merge the ag portion and the banking portion with a new manager's package, because the ag portion left off a lot of the bipartisan common ground that arguably should have been in that bill. So continue to do the work to finalize the whole market structure bill, and we have maybe 3 or 4 open items that different working groups are working very effectively in negotiating final resolution on those items. But one of the issues that I think is very important that people should be aware of is the Senate wants an ethics provision. I think the House would have had even more support on the Democratic side if they had retained their ethics provisions in their bill. It's very important that members of Congress do not get rich off of this industry because they have access to non-public information, because they have positions of power and authority. I think it is essential that members of Congress and any senior member of the administration, including the president, the vice president, are not issuers of cryptocurrencies or stable coins, that they aren't promoters, that they're not hucksters selling things. Like, we undermine the legitimacy of our government if people are getting rich off the backs of their positions. And so it's very important that we include this. I also work in this space with Republicans, specifically with Josh Hawley and Senator Moody, on these issues of members of Congress shouldn't be buying and selling stocks based on the non-public information that they get access to. So we have legislation to ban all of it across the board, that no one gets to get rich off of their position and their knowledge base because they are really privy to so much non-public information. So getting an ethics provision in this bill is essential. And if we get the ethics provision in the bill, you will unlock many more votes to make sure this issue stays nonpartisan. And it just shouldn't be, when we're creating rules of the road, having a blind spot that benefits members of Congress is disgraceful. So let's not have it, and make sure we can actually push this inclusion from the beginning, so we don't have an industry that is being taken advantage of by people who are writing the laws.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you are the president of the United States, I think you're not supposed to be issuing tokens. You know, makes sense, right? So that's why Trump, everybody's after, you know, what he did. Okay, now, hashtag FOMC, everybody. Are we ready? It's coming now. 1 minute. Less than 1 minute to go, everybody. Breaking news. Fed Powell will pause rates. If something else happens, you're going to see this candle move so fast. It's going to kill everybody. It's going to kill the whole shorts and longs. And the answer is the Fed rate is unchanged. 0 basis points. Interest rates remain at 3.75 as expected. Jerome Powell and the entire FOMC committee do nothing. Again, to the rate. Again, to the rate. Breaking. The Fed leaves rates unchanged. What a surprise. What a surprise. All right, guys. Now, everybody's ready to listen to Jerome Powell because we want him to reply to many things. Come on, Jerome, give us something good today. Got a lot of people here. Welcome, guys. Drop a like. Subscribe to the channel. Turn the notifications on. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Now, instead, what we're going to be seeing after the rate. Now, we're listening to Kristen Gillibrand and Tom Emmer, Senator, Congressman. Perfect. Clarity Act. We need it. Welcome.
Emmer, I'd also love to hear your thoughts, given you the House already passed the bill a while back.
Yeah, well, and I mean, what people need to understand, I've been told that this was going to be done by the end of September. It was going to be done by October. It was going to be done by the end of the year. I had a great discussion, a very short discussion, the senator and I backstage, and she gave me a ton of confidence that they are, in fact, going to be moving this shortly. And it's necessary because you've invented the cell phone, as our chairman, French Hill, likes to say, with the Genius Act, the stablecoin legislation. Now you need the towers. You need the market structure bill. And I would just point out, this is where the institutional knowledge of the House is incredibly important. We didn't just send them a bill that we created in the last 2 years. This is the at least fourth iteration of the market structure bill. Started with Maxine Waters, went to Patrick McHenry, then it was French Hill. We have gone through this in the House and had debate after debate after debate. I would argue that the bill that came out of the House, which I do believe the Senate can improve, and I love because you can always improve it. I think when we passed it, we said very publicly, this isn't perfect, but we've got to start somewhere. And this is the 6-7 years of work that the House has done so far, and the agreements and disagreements. I'm not going to get into what was in the bill and what they're going to do over in the Senate, because that is literally in their lap now. I just want to see them get something done. and send it back to us so that we can get the cell towers done. But I do want to comment on one other thing, which is I agree with the senator when she talks about the movement of money, movement of value, in this case, digital assets, the creation of wealth, the access to the marketplace, the financial marketplace. But we've got to understand as members of Congress that that's not how the young people are thinking in this sector. I mean, literally, young people have, explaining this to my colleagues and people in the administration, it's probably because I have 7 kids from the young 30s to the young 20s. It keeps you connected to what they're doing. The people, those of you maybe in this room that are involved in this space, it's not just about wealth creation. It's about making the world a better place for everyone. I mean, think of the opportunity. Kirsten was talking about people of color having more access. We shouldn't be worried about color. Right now we have to be. You have a system where everybody has access, everybody can participate. You're going to solve a lot of the world's problems going forward. And that's where our young kids, and for me, young is probably 18 to 35, somewhere in there, they have a much higher goal.
Am I young? Thank you.
Goal in mind than just the exchange of value. They're trying to literally improve our culture and our well-being.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think one thing that, talk about moving fast, yesterday the CFTC and SEC released interpretive guidance on token taxonomy, naming assets like APT a digital commodity. Do you think yesterday's regulatory action affects legislative momentum going forward?
I'll leave. We've done our work when we passed Genius. We've got some other bills. I loved what they did yesterday. Quite frankly, I've been saying now for years, we need a better understanding of what is cash, what is a commodity, what is security. You can't have the smorgasbord of regulators that you have to deal with everyone and not know what is expected, and more importantly, what the outcome is going to be. I think the clarifying work, I love the fact that these two, the CFTC and the SEC, are clarifying their relationship and making sure that we have an efficiency of operation instead of constantly crossing over. The other thing that I loved about yesterday, and it came from the SEC, I believe it was here, I was told, not everything is a security. Something can be it can be tokenized and part of an investment contract that is considered a security, but then it can morph into a non-security, and we should be clear about that. That's partly what the market structure bill is about. I've got the Securities Clarity Act, which we've been pushing for this very reason for a while. I don't think yesterday is going to frustrate it. I think yesterday actually just helps accelerate the urgency and the need that we have to make sure that the Senate and the House and the White House are all working in concert to move this forward. So like the senator says, when people start a new project, they look at the United States of America and they say, that's where we need to start it, because that's the most friendly place, and we know the rules and we know what we have to do to be compliant. Great. Let's make sure they start them all right here in this country.
Yeah, I haven't read the entire publication yet, because I think it's a lot of pages. I think it's 70 pages. But I have read their summary, and what they have done seems to be very consistent with where we are in negotiating market structure. They've come up with an agreed upon token taxonomy, which I think is very important. Just make sure we're all talking about the same thing. It builds on both clarity and what the Senate's writing right now in terms of what a digital commodity is. A digital commodity is not the same thing as a commodity. It has other restrictions and other requirements because it's something other than just a regular commodity. And it leaves open the requirement that if you are selling your asset through an offering that's similar to an investment contract, that you are going to be obligated to do disclosures so that the market knows what you're doing. Because unlike a commodity, you don't have offerings of commodities where you're selling and have centralized management like a stock or like a security. And so the elegance of what we are writing in market structure is that when you are offering your a token for sale, you are a network token. And under the network token framework, you are going to be required to do disclosures because you have so much inside information. You are still centrally managed. You still have centralized participants such as a board or a CEO. You are not decentralized yet. And the fact that they recognize the difference between that stage, just as you did, Congressman, that in the stage when you are raising money, and raising money is similar to an investment contract, that's when the disclosure is so necessary. And only the SEC has a disclosure framework that provides for consumer protection and for the ability to give the market and participants the ability to know basic information that you have as a centralized company and management. So that the fact that they recognize that is very smart and very grateful. I'm very grateful for that, because this is literally the core of what market structure is. That in this land of network tokens, when you are there, when you are actually raising money, you are very different than any other commodity in the world. And so you have to perform differently, and having that dual regulatory framework of the CFTC being your regulator, but having a disclosure requirement under the SEC is, I think, the brilliance of the market structure bill, because it recognizes that these digital assets are very different. You're not a security, you're not a commodity, you're something in between, and you can have the best of both worlds in terms of a regulatory framework so that the market is aware of what you're doing and you're not taking advantage of having disproportionate amount of insider information as an issuer, unlike any other commodity in the world.
Great to hear all that. We're running close on time, but I do want to try to get one more question in there if we can. I think, Senator, you talked a lot about innovations in decentralized finance in particular, and making America the center ground of DeFi integration. In a very short period of time, can you tell us some of the highlights and how you're thinking about making that happen in this country?
So a lot of the legislation really builds on the work you did on the DeFi space in the House bill. We are very excited for some of the opportunities that decentralized finance provides for access. There's much, though, in the industry that's not fully decentralized, and sometimes that it's an advantage, because when you still have centralized management of these various platforms, it allows you to create better transparency, more accountability, and more consumer protection. And so there's technological capabilities that you have if you still have centralized management, and we're trying to
let's go ahead and take a look at 20 minutes to go for the meeting, guys. 20 minutes to go for the meeting, for the conversation here and press briefing. What is it? Where is it? Or should I click? Oh, there you go. There should have, here's the statement. Here you go. All right. So this is what Jerome Powell is talking about. The committee available indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. Job gains have remained low, and the unemployment rate has been little changed in recent months. Inflation remains somewhat elevated. The committee seeks to achieve maximum employment and inflation at the rate of 2% over the long run. Uncertainty about the economic outlook remains elevated. The implications of developments in the Middle East for the U.S. economy are uncertain. The committee is attentive to the risk for both sides of its dual mandate. Therefore, they have decided to maintain, right, the target range for the federal funds rate. So they're not moving anything. So yeah, simple as that. Because of this, they're doing nothing right now, and they're not cutting. Why? Well, because they don't want to prolong inflation at this time, and they just kind of want to leave it as is. And Jerome Powell only has one more FOMC decision, and that's it. That's all he has. That's all he has.
Show the benefits of that and to incentivize having that measure of control, so you can create better cybersecurity, you can create better protections for consumers. And so we're trying to show the benefit of that in what we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much to you both for these wonderful, insightful answers. And this concludes our panel. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I think Okay, this guy, I didn't know he was pro crypto. Okay.
And the ecosystem of innovation that are around them right now, from financial services, blockchain technology, all of the decentralization that surrounds them, this is already a $3 trillion market. That alone is staggering and should have the attention of our nation and the world. It's a figure that represents incredible human beings, millions of customers that are looking to this space for hope and opportunity, the incredible tech jobs that are being created, startups, small businesses across the country. If you are looking for a space that should be exciting and hopeful, it is this space.
Thank you, Kirsty.
But undoubtedly, between blockchains, crypto, quantum computing, AI, robotics, this is something that really represents the cusp of the future. Advancements that are going to transform our world. And it is, frankly, what Washington should be more focused on, despite all the challenges and demands of the present. The future is coming at us. It is coming fast. And it's going to represent, for me, in an asset framing sort of way, it presents opportunities for our country that are revolutionary, that could be help us to continue to be the powerhouse of the world economy. It has the potential also to achieve ideals that were set 250 years ago at our founding. This ideal that we can make a more perfect union, that we can be a nation that is truly about freedom, where incumbents or those who have inherited wealth or that have status do not have ways of undermining that power that freedom brings, the power that genius is equally distributed around the world and in our nation, and that genius should have opportunities to spring forth. This is a space that can do that. It could be really the representation of the best of American values and ideals. Well, let me be more specific. When I was a kid, there were so many barriers to genius thriving. It was impossible, for example, to make it big in music, because generations that are digitally native are now becoming adults and have a different view. We should celebrate the generations that beat the Nazis, that turned the moon from a dream to a destination, that created companies that transformed the world with computing technology. This should all excite us so much that we have this extraordinary history, but the future is now. Now is the time that we need dreamers again. Now is the time we need to recommit ourselves and renew our founding principles at our 250th anniversary. Principles of freedom and equality, principles that understand that genius is equally distributed, that we are all created equal and endowed by our Creator with certain rights. It should also be this understanding that we have an obligation to one another, not to hate on each other, but to recognize we are each other's hope, we are each other's promise. We are the nation that founding document, the Declaration of Independence, ended that with these words: we must mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The very ideals of this nation, e pluribus unum, comes from a Cicero quote, that's part of the sentence. The beginning of the sentence was, love your neighbor so that you can make the many out of one. We cannot lose our adherence to the values that motivated everybody from Abraham Lincoln to FDR to Ronald Reagan. And so I just say in closing, there is an urgency in this moment. I say in closing that true patriotism is not about flags and songs. It's about that quiet devotion that we have something special in the United States. And part of that is our commitment to community and to the things that help community thrive. I see the future as the only United States senator that lives in a low-income neighborhood in an inner city. I see the future every day. I see it in the faces of young people. I see it in hardworking grit of my neighbors. I see it in this audience here. There is an urgency America is at a cusp. It is at a crossroads. And the only way we have shown how we can move forward is to turn towards one another and know, like that old African saying, if you want to go fast, go it alone. But if you want to go far, we go together. Thank you, everybody.
Was that a presidential speech or talk about crypto? I mean, first time that I see Cory Booker talk about crypto, honest, I mean, I didn't know, but that's exactly why they host the DC Blockchain Summit, Welcome, guys. How you doing? We're going to have Jerome Powell in about 12 minutes from now. We got an unchanged, maintain, pause federal funds rate, so he's not doing anything right now. Powell is just not cutting. And he has a lot. I mean, Powell has so much ammo right now to say why he's not cutting. We know that. The war, the Supreme Court with the tariffs, and ongoing, stress in the glove, oil prices. I mean, he has so much. So despite Donald J. Trump saying this, longest 20 minutes ever. Despite Trump saying this, when is too late Powell lowering interest rates? 6 hours ago? No, he's not going to do it. Jerome Powell is not obeying, not kissing the ring. He's not doing what Trump wants. Simple as that. So, fortunate for us, we are not going to be waiting that long, guys, because some of you don't understand. When we got Trump in early 2025, everybody was like, woohoo, we're going to have some changes for an entire year from January till September. Pause after pause after pause after pause after pause after pause. Nothing. Till September, and he cut 25 and then another 25 and then nothing. He hasn't done anything, guys. And Trump is like, I'm tired of you, dude. I'm going to get you out. I can fire you. I want to do so much. So Kevin Warsh is going to come in. We're going to be watching that confirmation, guys. We are going to watch that entire, I don't care if it's 2-3 hours or so. We're going to watch that beauty. I'm so ready, guys. So welcome. Oh, man. What a crazy period, bro. Who's next?
Our first task was
my
just
goodness.
listening to people. It was something that the commission hadn't done very well in the years preceding. And so trying to listen to people, trying to get written input, have roundtables, and hear from people what they thought was important. And one of those issues that kept coming up, of course, was tell us, when is something a security, when is it not, when do the securities laws apply and when not. We did do staff level guidance. And again, I should emphasize that though the task force is a set of people at the agency, we're working with people across the agency who have been working extremely hard. Staff across the agency have been working with us extremely hard to get products out there. So whether it's staff guidance, no action letters.
Restroom break.
And then yesterday's commission level interpretation and taxonomy, I think was helpful. And as the chairman mentioned yesterday, we've got more work in the hopper that's coming soon. But so the idea was to get the products out early that we could, and then to move to more durable products as well. And of course, we're looking ahead to when the Clarity Act comes out, and then we'll work on the implementing regulations for that.
Yeah. And to the extent you can or able to, what are kind of the next tangible items that may come out of these efforts?
So I think the one that we're really, that the chairman highlighted yesterday, I think is important, is this idea of enabling people to do capital raising using a crypto asset. What does that look like? Some different approaches to that. But there are a lot of other issues that are on the agenda. Tokenization of traditional securities has been a topic that has really been, I mean, once the SEC announced that it was taking a different tack, we got a lot of interest from crypto native firms, but also from traditional firms saying, hey, we want to see what tokenization could do for our traditional stocks and bonds. And so that's where there's a lot of interest now. And I think another thing to be on the lookout for is an innovation exemption, where we will work with people who are interested in trading tokenized securities. That's, as everything else we're doing, is an incremental step. People should comment on what we're doing. People should tell us what else they need. That's a really important piece of this process, is to spend our time and resources on things that will be useful to people. But we hope that an innovation exemption could be useful to people. The goal is not to force intermediaries into situations where they don't have to be, but it's to say when there are intermediaries involved, what does that look like? There are a lot of very complicated questions here about how the securities laws apply, but we're not in putting out an exemption. The goal is not to pull more in. It's to say we want to give people the comfort to be able to tokenize traditional securities and to interact with them.
Yeah. And tokenization really seems to be where traditional finance is hitting the blockchain first. We've tokenized funds. You've issued some FAQ guidance around the haircut treatment of permitted payment stable coins, which we're already seeing broker-dealers adapt in various different ways.
Okay, 5 minutes to go. Oh my goodness. I'm telling you guys, I'm so pumped. I'm so pumped. I'm so pumped. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up, and don't you know, pump it up. What's up, everybody? I understand. People are just throwing the towel now, but we're not leaving. And we're gonna be playing those tunes as soon as we start seeing some green on the streets. Come on. Put it up. I want to remind you guys that we have a 4,000 XRP giveaway right now. First link down below. So you guys want to get some free XRP, all you got to do is sign up with my link, trade, deposit. We still have till the end of the month, so I want you guys to win badly, guys. So go ahead. What is going on, buddy? It's going to happen in less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So get ready for more.
Hello, everyone. There are 5 minutes before the news conference begins. When the news conference begins, the chair will make a brief opening statement and then take your questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and Michelle Smith will be standing right there. We'll call on you. When you're called on, please wait for a microphone to be passed to you. There will be one on either side of the room. And then also please take this time to silence any phones, computers, cameras, anything that could make noise during the briefing. I will be back shortly with a 2-minute warning.
Well done.
Didn't know you were back there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is purple the new color?
Yeah, we planned that. We sent a little message this morning. On Wednesdays, we wear black.
Hey, they're having fun at the Fed. I like that. Come on. I mean, keep it fun, keep it engaging. I like that. Very good, very good. Roast them. Are you tired of winning? We're never tired of winning, brother. We're going higher, of course. So very happy to see you guys. It's gonna be a good day. It's gonna be a good day, guys. Ooh, guys, they just finished an ASA minor interview with Alcon Daily. Oh, dude, that's amazing. Woo-hoo-hoo. There you go. There you go. Perfect. Okay. It's good to be happy, It's good to be happy. Come on. It's good to be happy. I'm tired of the crashes. I'm tired of the sell-offs, but we're happy. Come on, everybody. There you go. Crypto is linked to a sinking ship. We're gonna be fine. Fed rates unchanged. Indeed, unchanged. Indeed. You got the Lambo glasses on? I mean, we're not... I got the Lambo glasses right here, but we're just not pumping enough, you know? Two minutes. Come on, lady. Give us a 2 minutes warning. So already I'm pumped for you. Again, welcome to everybody. Very happy to see you all. Again, with the FOMC. Price of XRP at 145. It was 160 just yesterday. It came down a lot, but now we are expecting what the chair is going to say.
2 minutes, everybody.
$100 seconds. Okay. I'll go ahead and mute, and we'll listen to Jerome Powell as he talks to the whole country. Everybody's watching, and everybody's trading right now. People are trading right now. As soon as he speaks, there's going to be a lot of liquidations. Here it comes.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. The U.S. economy has been expanding at a solid pace. While job gains have remained low, the unemployment rate has been little changed in recent months, and inflation remains somewhat elevated. Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy rate unchanged. We see the current stance of monetary policy as appropriate to promote progress toward our maximum employment and 2% inflation goals. The implications of developments in the Middle East for the U.S. economy are uncertain. We will remain attentive to risks to both sides of our dual mandate. And I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Available indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. Consumer spending has been resilient, and business fixed investment has continued to expand. In contrast, activity in the housing sector has remained weak. In our summary of economic projections, the median participant projects that real GDP will rise 2.4% this year and 2.3% next year, somewhat stronger than projected in December. In the labor market, the unemployment rate was 4.4% in February and has changed little since late last summer. Job gains have remained low. A good part of the slowing in the pace of job growth over the past year reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and labor force participation, though labor demand has clearly softened as well. Other indicators, including job openings, layoffs, hiring, and nominal wage growth, generally show little change in recent months. In our SEP, the median projection of the unemployment rate is 4.4% at the end of this year and edges down thereafter. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index and other data indicate that total PCE prices rose 2.8% over the 12 months ending in February, and that excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.0%. These elevated readings largely reflect inflation in the goods sector, which has been boosted by the effects of tariffs. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have risen in recent weeks, likely reflecting the substantial rise in oil prices caused by the supply disruptions in the Middle East. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation this year is 2.7% and 2.2% next year, a bit higher than projected in December. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5% to 3.75%. From last September through December, we lowered our policy rate 0.75 percentage point, bringing it within a range of plausible estimates of neutral. This normalization of our policy stance should continue to help stabilize the labor market while allowing inflation to resume its downward trend toward 2%. But the implications of events in the Middle East for the U.S. economy are uncertain. In the near term, higher energy prices will push up overall inflation, but it is too soon to know the scope and duration of the potential effects on the economy. We will continue to monitor the risks to both sides of our mandate. We are well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path of the federal funds rate under what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario for the economy. The median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 3.4% at the end of this year and 3.1% at the end of next year, unchanged from December. As is always the case, these individual forecasts are subject to uncertainty, and they are not a committee plan or decision. Monetary policy is not on a preset course, and we'll make our decisions on a meeting-by-meeting basis. To conclude, the Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We at the Fed will continue to do our jobs with objectivity, integrity, and a deep commitment to serve the American people. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Colby Smith of the New York Times. There's been some debate about whether the Fed should look through the inflation that will come from higher oil prices stemming from the Middle East conflict. Is that the right approach at this juncture? And to what extent does the fact that inflation has been above target for roughly 5 years now influence the committee's thinking around this?
So, first, let me say we're well aware of the performance of inflation over the last few years and how a series of shocks have interrupted progress that we've made over time. And that happened most recently with tariffs, and now there will be some effects on inflation coming forward. The thing that's really important that we see this year is progress on inflation through a reduction in goods inflation as the one-time effects on prices of tariffs go through the system, go through the economy. That's the main thing we're looking for going into this exercise. And we need to be seeing that to sort of understand that we actually are making progress, because on net we didn't make progress. And if you look at total core inflation, it's about 3%. And some big chunk of that, between 1/2 and 3/4, is actually tariffs. So we're looking for progress on that. The question of whether we look through the energy inflation doesn't really arise until we have kind of checked that box. It, of course, is kind of standard learning that you look through energy shocks, but that's always been dependent on inflation expectations remaining well anchored. And I think now it's also dependent on what you mentioned, which is that broader context of 5 years now of inflation above target. We have to keep all of those things in mind, and the question of looking through when it does arise will be one to approach not lightly, but in the context that you mentioned.
And just on the SEP, can you help us make sense of why there is still a bias to cut for most officials this year, despite the upward revision to headline and core inflation and the essentially unchanged forecast for growth and unemployment? Just curious, kind of what's the genesis behind the need? What's the need for the cut?
Forecast is that we will be making progress on inflation. Not as much as we had hoped, but some progress on inflation. It should come as we start to see in the middle of the year progress on tariffs, going through once and then tariff inflation coming down. We should be seeing that. And, the rate forecast is conditional on the performance of the economy. So if we don't see that progress, then you won't see the rate cut.
Howard.
Thank you. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just to follow up a little bit and to be clear, is the higher inflation penciled in here for 2026 solely the result of the oil shock or something else?
So that's going to be part of it. But, that wouldn't be most of core, right? So the oil shock for sure shows up here. Some of that will be in core as well. But yes, but no, there's also just the feeling that we haven't seen, the progress that we had hoped for on core goods. And on tariffs and on the rest of it. So for whatever reason, people did write up their inflation forecast. That will certainly be tied to events in the Middle East and the price of oil, but it's also, I think, a reflection of the slow progress we've seen on tariffs, which we believe we will see. It's just a question of how long it takes for them to get all the way through the economy, and it just takes some time.
Right. And is the lack of change in the SEPs, again, just to explicate this a little bit, more due to the expectation that the oil portion of this will pass through, or more out of concern that there is a potential blow to consumption and growth coming in the form of wealth effects with the stock market down, in the form of gas prices, diverting spending from other parts of the economy?
So I didn't get the second part of your question.
The consumers are going to be potentially diverting money to gasoline from other parts of the economy. There could be a growth shock or a redistribution of spending there that can hit consumption, wealth effects as well. I guess I'm wondering, is the rate forecast not changing because you think the oil shock is going to be temporary, or because you want to be sure you're positioned in case growth starts to slow?
So the thing I really want to emphasize is that nobody knows. The economics effect could be bigger, they could be smaller, they could be much smaller or much bigger. We just don't know. So people are writing down something that seems to make sense to them, but have no conviction that to your point, if we have if we have a long period of much higher gas prices, that's going to weigh on consumption. That'll weigh on disposable personal income, and it'll weigh on consumption. But we don't know if that's going to happen. Something quite different than that. We might have much lower than expected pass-through. So people write down, this is one of those SEPs where a number of people mentioned if we were ever going to skip an SEP, this would be a good one, because we just don't know. So I wouldn't say there's a conviction that this is going to go through quickly or not quickly. It's just you got to write something down, and this is something that is that people wrote down, and we don't debate how long. How do you do that? We wouldn't be able to debate what the length of or size of these effects would be. We just have to kind of make an individual statement, and also what you've written down before you'll be reluctant to move too far away from that just because you don't know. It's so unclear what the direction from this particular end will be. Meanwhile, the growth has been solid, and inflation, the overshoot is mainly from the goods and tariffs. And, the labor market is, the unemployment rate, of course, is little changed since September. You have a very, very low break-even rate, apparently, for new jobs, with little growth in either demand or supply. But the U.S. economy is doing pretty well. It's just we don't know what the effects of this will be, and really no one does.
Steve.
Mr. Chair, in the past, the staff has suggested that higher oil prices they have a hit to consumption, which Howard was talking about, but that's somewhat offset by increases to domestic production. I wonder if you could talk about that dynamic, especially to the extent that how much U.S. production is happening right now.
So the first thing is there is, the original thinking, the long-standing thinking, put it that way, is that you do look through energy shocks. But as I mentioned, that's conditioned on inflation expectations and that kind of thing. So, sorry, your question was?
What the staff is saying about, and has said in the past.
Yeah.
About
so there'll be an offset.
Offsets, yeah.
So that's true. We have, we're a net exporter of energy, right? So any effects on employment and economic activity and spending would be offset to some extent by the fact that our oil companies will be more profitable and they may even do more drilling. If you ask oil companies about doing more drilling, though, they're going to want to see, a consistent rise in oil prices from where they were before the buildup for the war, and they're going to want to believe that that's going to be persistent for a fairly long time. So they're not sitting there waiting for oil to go over $70 a barrel, and then they're going to start drilling or whatever. They're going to make a reasoned, careful judgment that we're going to have higher oil prices for an extended period, meaningfully higher. So I wouldn't say there's much of that happening. Not much will be happening now, but some of that could happen over time if you see that. But so the net of the oil shock will still be some downward pressure on spending and employment and upward pressure on inflation, of course.
And if I could just follow up on Colby's question, how much do you worry that, having looked through tariff inflation and inflation running above target and looking through the oil price shock, would undermine the credibility of your commitment to the 2% target?
We have to do our analysis and think these things through carefully, but of course that's on everyone's mind. We're well aware of the history, but you don't want to overreact to that. You want to make the best judgment you can based on the facts. I don't think we're going to let it color our decision-making more than is appropriate. It's more the thought that it's been 5 years, and we've actually had, we had the tariff shock, we had the pandemic, and now we have an energy shock of some size and duration. We don't know what that's going to be, actually. And, it's one of those things where it's a repeated set of things, and you worry that that's the kind of thing that can cause trouble for inflation expectations, and so we worry a lot about that, and we are very strongly committed to doing what it takes to keep inflation expectations anchored at 2%, and I think it's important that we do that. Very important.
Nick.
Nick Timmeros, Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, you've described monetary policy as modestly restrictive. If the unemployment rate is roughly stable, inflation moving sideways in the high twos, with an ongoing overshoot in services and non-housing services, not just goods, and the economy doing fairly well, as you just outlined, what gives you confidence that inflation returns to target over the next couple of years?
Okay. So I would say the rate is, you can characterize it as in the high end of neutral, or you can characterize it as perhaps mildly restrictive, even modestly restrictive. No one knows for sure, but it's in that range where it's somewhere around the borderline between restrictive and not. Remember that a big part of the disinflation we're looking for is just the runoff of when tariffs are put into place. Of course, what they do is they raise prices to some extent, to the extent those prices the tariffs are paid by consumers on a one-time basis. And we're waiting for that process. It takes 8, 9, 10, 11 months, a year to go through the system, and we're waiting for the tariffs, which were put in place over the course of the middle part and later last year. We're waiting for that to go through the system, so that goods inflation will return closer to what it's always been. I mean, it used to be for many years it was negative, and then the year before tariffs came in, it was 0, and it's running at like 2% now. So. And so that's kind of, goods inflation is running at 2%. So that's not coming from standard Phillips curve restrictive policy. It's coming from the runoff of a one-time thing. We also think it's important, though, to keep policy, either mildly restrictive or close to that, but not too restrictive because of the weakness in the downside risk in the labor market. We are balancing these two goals in a situation where the risks to the labor market are to the downside, which would call for lower rates, and the risks to inflation are to the upside, which would call for higher rates, or not cutting anyway. So we're in a difficult situation, and we feel like our framework calls on us to balance the risks, and we feel like where we are now, which is kind of on that borderline, the higher borderline of restrictive versus not restrictive, we feel like that's the right place to be.
Can I ask about core non-housing services, though? Because there are some people who think that it hasn't come down very much, if at all, over the past year. If wage growth has come down, if the labor market has loosened, why has non-housing services inflation maybe been slower to follow?
That's a good question. It's frustrating. Non-housing services they basically moved sideways for a year. They're at the same level, and we do expect that they will come down. But it's a bunch of idiosyncratic things. But at the same time, that is one of the things we should be seeing, because to your point, the labor market is clearly not a source of inflationary pressures, and that should really matter for non-housing services, but we're not seeing progress there. So we do, what we expect for next year is what we want to see for this year, rather, is continued progress on housing services, finally seeing that the goods inflation come back down because the one-time effects of tariffs are through, and then also get some help from non-housing services. That's what we'd like to see, but it's a good question why we didn't see much of that last year.
Edward.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. So in December, we saw employment numbers revised down to negative 17,000. January revised down. February posted a loss of 92,000. Is the employment side a far greater risk than the inflation side? Because we are seeing inflation, CPI is close to 2%. PCE has ticked down overall.
It's really, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that that's clear at all, that one is more at risk than the other. So you can point to the unemployment rate being stable, and in a world where both supply and demand for workers have come down very, very sharply over the course of the past year due to immigration policy largely, a ratio is going to be a better thing to look at than job creation, for example. So, and the ratio is the unemployment rate, and it's been stable since September. So that tells you that. Inflation, you can. We're at 3.0% core. Inflation 2.8% headline. So we've been well above the 2%, that amount, whatever it is, 0.7, 0.8, or a full percentage point above 2% for some time. And that's a concern. We need to get back down to 2%. And we need to keep focused on that, even though we do now face some new inflation from energy. So I'd be hard-pressed to say that one of them is obviously more at risk than the other.
And if I may, what happens if there's no Federal Reserve chairman confirmed on May 15th? Would you stay on?
So if my successor is not confirmed by the end of my term as chair, I would serve as chair pro tem until he is confirmed. That is what the law calls for. That's what we've done on several occasions, including involving me, and it's what we're going to do in this situation. And while I'm at it, on the question whether I will leave while the investigation is ongoing, I have no intention of leaving the board until the investigation is well and truly over, with transparency and finality. And I would refer you to the statement that was in the Fed's brief that you all have seen, and I won't have anything more for you on that. On the question of whether I will then continue to serve as a governor after my term ends and after the investigation is over, I have not made that decision yet, and I will make that decision based on what I think is best for the institution and for the people we serve. Figuring you probably were going to set the dominoes off there, Edward. And I'm not going to have any more to say on those issues, by the way.
Thank you very much. Claire Jones from the Financial Times. People have drawn quite a few historical parallels with the current situation. We've seen oil price shocks in the past. Some people have said the first Gulf War and the Fed's response to that, where there was a focus on the growth risks, is the right parallel. To what extent would you agree with that, and to what extent do you think we're in a different place today? Thank you.
It's really hard to say until we see the situation, the actual situation. In some circumstances, that might be the right case. In fact, for example, if we do see the kinds of disinflationary progress that we expect to see due to tariffs that I mentioned, I think it's hard to say, and it will depend to some extent on the size and duration of the effects we're seeing on prices, and it will depend a lot on what we can see in inflation expectations.
And just one follow-up, if I may, just on the BLS report that was mentioned briefly there. It doesn't seem from the projections or from the comments you've made today about the unemployment rate and focusing on that your view on the labour market story, to a large part being a supply-side story, has changed despite the quite negative number in February. Would that be the right take, and was there anyone else in the room who thought differently and that the February jobs report was cause for concern?
So I think you have to take the two together. In a way, the January report was a positive surprise, and the February report was a negative surprise. If you put them together, you get something in the middle, and I think you have to really, as you do, I'm sure, realize there was a strike and there was weather, and that's about 80,000 of the negative effect total on the February report. Notwithstanding that, so what do you see if you take a step back overall? There are a number of indicators that suggest a degree of stability, but the thing that I think good number of people on the committee are concerned about is just the very, very low level of job creation. If you adjust what has been the trend job creation over the past, let's say, 6 months, if you adjust that for what we think, our staff thinks, is the overstatement due to overcounting, effectively there's zero net job creation in the private sector. But actually that looks like that's about what the economy needs in terms of dealing with very, very low, non-existent, really, growth in the labor force, which, of course, we've never had in our history. So you've got a sort of a zero employment growth equilibrium. Now that's balance, okay, but I would say it does have a feel of downside risk, and it's not kind of a really comfortable balance. So we look at that, we see it, we get it, and I mean everybody understands the arithmetic, and that's you can say the break even is zero, but nonetheless it's something we're watching carefully, and are concerned about. But ultimately, though, you can argue that it's a consequence of deliberate policy, which is really the changes to immigration. That's the biggest factor there, and but nonetheless something we watch carefully.
Andrew.
Thanks, Chair Powell. The economy's experienced a series of supply shocks in the last few years, COVID, tariffs, 2 oil price shocks. Do you think that is bad luck, or has something changed in the world that makes supply shocks more common, and does the central bank need to start taking account of the risk of supply shocks as a more common problem?
We did go through a long period where the shocks were all demand shocks, and so we've had a lot of practice thinking about supply shocks in the last 4 or 5 years, for sure. And it's just a very different thing, and a much more difficult thing, because it does immediately raise the question of tension between the two parts of our mandate. But has the world changed? I mean, COVID is a one-time thing, right? This energy supply shock is a one-time thing. It's not because of some broad tendency or anything, I don't think. And the oil shock with Ukraine was also a consequence of military action. So I don't know that the world has changed in a way that there'll be more supply shocks. But there's people have written that paper and that speech a number of times. A number of people have tried to make the case that is the case. And in fact, we have seen more supply shocks in the last 5 years than we've seen in many years before that. It's a fact.
Okay. You said last year that the Fed was reviewing its communication strategies, including the SEP, as part of its framework review. Whatever happened to that? And I have like 5 follow-ups to that, but I guess, what would you change about Fed communications if you had the time? Thanks.
What happened about that was not much, and I'll tell you why. So, we looked carefully at many aspects of the SEP and of our communications, and there weren't any ideas that had very broad support on the committee. And you don't want to make a change to your communications unless you have have the committee behind that. So we didn't really make any changes on that. I had hoped that they had some things that I wanted to do, but they didn't attract broad support, and we'd already made all the changes we made to the framework. That was a critical thing. So we didn't. And, I wish we had been able to do some things, but we didn't. So maybe the next chair will take a look. I'm sure he will.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Television and Radio. The minutes show in January some members of the committee wanted to include a two-sided guidance on policy. Was that discussed today? And given the rise in the inflation expectations, how much support for a two-sided policy warning would there be?
So it did come up today. The policy that the possibility, rather, that our next move might be an increase did come up at the meeting, as it did at the last meeting. The vast majority of participants don't see that as their base case. And of course, we don't take things off the table. But you correctly characterized, what was in the minutes that several participants indicated, and something very much like that conversation did happen. What was your second question, though?
I was just one question there, but follow-up would be, there are a lot of goods besides oil that are trapped in the Strait right now, and a lot of supply chains getting snarled. How much concern do you have about whether, if this becomes an inflation problem beyond just oil, whether there's anything you can do about it or would do about it, given the efficacies of monetary policy?
You can worry about other commodities. You can worry about all of the ways that oil-related commodities go into manufacturing and that kind of thing. The truth is, it's completely out of our hands, and we just, like everybody else, we have to just wait and see what happens, and it'll come down to how long the current situation lasts, and then what are the effects on prices, and then how do consumers react and that kind of thing. Really, I wouldn't speculate in any way, and there's really not a lot we can do other than kind of watch and see.
Maria Luisa.
Afternoon, Chair Powell. Maria Luisa Capurro with Bloomberg News. I wanted to ask you, you've said longer-term measures of inflation expectations reflect confidence that the Fed will get back to its 2% goal, but there are some colleagues of yours who have pointed to higher dispersion in household service, in business service as well. So, and that they take as a signal that inflation expectations may be less sticky than in the past. I'm wondering if there was a discussion around that at this meeting across the committee, and what were the views of what is the state of inflation expectations and the risks from higher oil and gas prices.
So at this meeting, I mean, a number of people mentioned and staff briefed on short-term expectations having moved up quite a lot for reasons we understand well. But long-term expectations, you can always find one that's troubling or some aspect of one that's troubling, but ultimately, right through this whole period, the overwhelming majority of the things we look to, including markets, including surveys of the public and also of forecasters, they've all been pretty solid on longer-term inflation expectations being right where they need to be, consistent with 2%. So that continues to be the case. We didn't have a lot of conversation about that. I think everyone does agree that we'll be watching those extremely carefully as we see the effects of the price increases come through from the conflict.
And still on how the discussion went across the committee, before coming to this meeting, there were some members who were discussing the risks of a slowdown in growth and at a time of where inflation remains high. It really doesn't seem that most members are penciling in a slowdown in growth.
No.
But has there been any discussion of the risks of stagflation at this point?
So people actually wrote up their growth forecast by a tenth, and I think that's probably to do with just growing confidence in productivity. But sorry, and your second question was just.
If there have been any discussions about the risk of stagflation, stagflation scenario.
Yeah, so As I mentioned, there's tension between the two goals, right? The upward risk for inflation and downward risk for employment. So, and that puts us in a different situation. You know, when we use the term stagflation, I always have to point out that was a 1970s term at a time when unemployment was in double figures and inflation was really high and the misery index was super high. Add them together, you get the misery index. And that's not the case right now. We actually have unemployment really close to longer run normal. And we have inflation that's, 1 percentage point above that. So calling that stagflation, it's not, I would reserve the term stagflation for, a much more serious set of circumstances. That is not the situation we're in. What we have is some tension between the goals, and we're trying to manage our way through it. It's a very difficult situation, but it's nothing like what they faced in the 1970s, and I reserve stagflation for that, the word for that period. Maybe that's just me.
Elizabeth.
Thanks so much. Elizabeth Schulze with ABC News. President Trump says that oil prices and overall inflation will go down very rapidly as soon as the war ends. Do you agree with that?
I don't have a forecast on that.
When we're thinking about the impact on American households, as you know, they've been facing these higher prices for years. They've seen an almost $1 increase in gas. How worried are you about households, especially lower income families, being able to afford those price hikes? And should people be bracing for higher costs, including for food now?
We don't know how big these effects are going to be, and I don't want to characterize them in any way. Of course, people are already seeing gas prices. Gas prices are up almost $1 a gallon. We hope that isn't for a long period of time, and of course people will feel that, but I don't want to speculate about what that might mean, because honestly that would sound like I have some idea of what's actually going to happen, and I don't think anybody really does. We're going to see how this works out, and I just would leave it at that.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guido with Politico. I just wanted to ask, for purposes of the next meeting, how the Middle East war develops between now and then, how are you thinking about what might guide action at your next meeting? I mean, if we have oil prices, above $100 a barrel the entire time until the next meeting, is that going to change your wait and see stance? Like, what would lead you all to move, or are you on hold pretty indefinitely?
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, we always say we're going to learn more by the next meeting, and usually we do, but in this case we're going to learn a lot, because we're going to learn 6 weeks to the day till the next meeting, and we're going to see whether what happens is it's going to be very important for the way the economy looks and the way the outlook evolves with what happens in the Middle East. That's going to be a big factor, and we'll know that then. I don't know how it's going to affect our thinking. I really don't. And we did talk about alternative scenarios a little bit, but it's just, I wouldn't bring that in here. It's very uncertain, and I just want to remember that we don't know, and we shouldn't assume it's going to be one thing or another. We're going to see.
So is it a matter of you don't know how the situation itself is going to evolve, or even if things remain as they are, the economy could still remain relatively durable in face of them?
Yeah, that's true too. No, I mean, the U.S. economy has just, made it's been strong through a whole bunch of challenges. I mean, if you go back to 2023, when we raised rates a lot in 22 and 23, and close to 100% of economists called for a recession, which didn't happen. In fact, 2023 was a really strong year. So the U.S. economy has really been just doing pretty well through a lot of significant challenges over the past few years. It's been amazing to see. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next intermeeting cycle, and I don't know what's going to happen in the Middle East. I wouldn't want to speculate.
Hi, Chair Powell. Thanks for taking our questions. What makes you so certain that tariff-related price increases will be a one-time effect? I don't think we've seen you since the Supreme Court tariff decision, and it's pretty clear that none of us know what the extent of the tariff shock will be as the administration moves to replace some of the tariffs that were overturned. So I suppose I'm curious, what would make you question this certainty that tariffs are going to be a one-time price effect?
Well, I would not at all use the word certain about my views on that. I'm not certain. I'm uncertain. But just if you think about what it is, it's a one-time increase in the price of a good, right? And what inflation is ongoing increases in prices this year, next year, the year after. That's what inflation is. It's not a one-time price increase. There's a very, very big difference. The public doesn't really focus on that, but that's the difference. And tariffs should be in theory, unless they cause people to start expecting still more tariffs the next year and still more tariffs the next year, they should be a classic one-time thing. People say the same thing traditionally about an energy price spike, because traditionally prices go up and they come back down. And by the time monetary policy would react, it would be over. So I don't have tons of confidence on that. I mean, I think that the theory is probably right, but as usual, the time it takes to get all the way through the economy is just very uncertain. And we found that coming out of COVID, that the inflation did go away, and largely for the reasons we thought it would, but it took 2 years longer than we thought. So I think we have to be humble about knowing how long it will take for tariffs to go all the way through the economy. And so what we've been doing is our staff's been doing, it's very interesting. They started off with just an estimate because there wasn't a real history. And then they've built, based on the history that they're seeing of tariffs coming through into prices, they can now have an arc. And for all the tariffs, they can say, well, so we have, I think, a slightly more confidence that we will see tariff inflation coming down, not prices, but you won't see further increases. And we should start seeing that more and more in the middle parts of the year. We do expect that. Now, you're also right, though, that the level of tariffs came down fairly meaningfully in the wake of the court decision. But the administration said they're going to get that rate right back up to where it was. So, and we assume that they'll do that over time. So that's how we think about it.
Thank you.
Chris Rugaber.
Hi, thank you. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. You talked about the shortcomings of the SCP in this environment. I wanted to ask about
meaningfully in the wake of the court decision, but the administration said they're going to get that rate right back up to where it was. So, and we assume that they'll do that over time. So that's how we think about it.
Thank you.
Chris Rugaber.
Hi, thank you. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. You talked about the shortcomings of the SCP in this environment. I wanted to ask about, or throw in an additional thing, which is the fact that it's happening before transition. Is there still some value, perhaps, in the public knowing what other Fed officials are thinking, the ones who will stay on for the rest of the year and beyond? And does that even handicap your successor in any way? Well, just in terms of having a whole committee expressing its views, is that something that locks them in for the rest of the year?
No. We never. The SEP is never. People are more than happy to change their SEP dots. They're no way bound by them. It's your opinion at a moment in time, which can change based on events. Sometimes very quickly. So it never locks people in. People are more than happy to be proven wrong in either direction, and so I just think we do it. And I mentioned this was a time when it's very hard to do it. During the pandemic, we actually took one meeting off, I think, but we don't like to do that just because it's hard to do. We should just keep doing it. But I just would say for this one, though, I think it's even more than usual good to take the forecast with a grain of salt, because subject to just very high levels of uncertainty.
Brian.
Hi, Chair Powell. Brian Chung with NBC News. So you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that you're well aware of the history of inflation running above target. It seems like that might be what's underpinning the affordability problem that we're hearing a lot about on Main Street. Are there any signs to you that that's impacting the psychology of the consumer, especially given that they're a big driver of overall economic activity?
I'm not sure what that's all about, but I'll tell you what I think and what we see in surveys, and that is, there were big price increases all around the world, by the way, everywhere in countries like the United States had basically the same kind of thing. It was a global inflation coming out of the pandemic. And everywhere people are feeling like real wages have been going up in the United States now for 3 years, roughly. But people are not feeling good about it yet. And it will take some years of positive real earning gains for people to feel good again, we think. But you're right. But when you talk to people, they do feel squeezed. And there are areas where prices are still going up, like insurance. Various different kinds of insurance are getting more and more expensive, and that's just catching up really from inflationary pressures that take a while to get to into the price. So we take it very seriously. We don't dismiss it at all. It's a very real thing from the standpoint of what people are experiencing, and what it does for us is makes us even more committed, if that's possible, to getting inflation back to 2% on a sustained basis.
How does the Fed's independence play into the ability to address affordability?
Well, independence is what allows us to do our jobs, and stable prices is half of our mandate. It's one of our two mandates, maximum employment being the other. I mean, look at every advanced economy that looks anything like the United States, anywhere in the world, in a market economy, in a democracy, and you'll see, pretty much central bank independence that looks a lot like, in some cases, stronger than what we have. But it's critical that we have that so that we can do the things when we need to do them to preserve price stability. And it's an accepted standard practice, and I think has a lot of support, certainly in Congress, which is where our oversight is in Congress. And you see that among Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate.
Hi, Chair Powell. Richard Escobedo at CBS News. Thanks for doing this. Two questions. One, how high would oil prices and broader inflation have to go, and for how long, for the committee to consider hiking rates? And then secondly, diesel prices are rising faster than gas prices. How concerned are you that the increase in diesel might drive up food and goods prices and lead to broader inflation?
Yeah, I'm not going to give you an example or specific answer on the first question. We're prepared to do what needs to be done, but I wouldn't want to hypothesize about what that might be. In terms of diesel prices. So your question there is, are we concerned about it? I mean,
how concerned, and whether or not it will drive up, the cost of food and other goods that really rely on it to.
So I think it's a more general concern than that. It's diesel prices because that's transportation of food and things like that. There are just lots of ways that oil and derivatives of oil get into the production and transportation of many, many things. So, and those, there are big effects in headline inflation, but things like that leak into core as well. And the effects may not be as big, but they're quite real and they're material. So we are aware of that, and we're watching it, but we're right at the beginning of this, and we don't know how big we just don't know how big this will be and how long it lasts. It may or may not be something that really makes a big imprint on the U.S. economy. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Thank you.
Archie, for the last question.
Thanks very much. Just to sort of stare into the future for a little bit, I was looking at the longer run bits of the SEP and noticed that the growth estimate had been revised up a good chunk from 1.8 to 2, and the kind of long-term Fed funds rate as well. It'd be great just to hear, is that AI productivity or what's going on there exactly?
Yeah, I think it's just productivity. We actually started seeing meaningfully higher productivity some years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and that's not because of generative AI. We won't know for years what it's really due to. But it could be due to the kind of things that people did during the pandemic to economize and somehow become more productive because there was an incredible labor shortage. But I think economic forecasters are very skeptical of periods of high productivity because they're so rare, and they're often revised away. And for many of us, I never thought I'd see this many years of really high productivity, and by the way, expect it to continue. And we haven't really started to see the effects of generative AI, and that should certainly contribute to that. So it's quite unusual, and it's this is the higher productivity is the thing that allows incomes to rise over time, and so it's a great thing. Was that your question?
Yeah, no, I was just curious what lay behind that. And just briefly on that as well to finish up, you hear the argument a lot, this is a sort of disinflationary story, and if you believe that productivity thing, that should also weigh down inflation over time, maybe then kind of pull down where rates end up. Do you kind of agree with that line of thinking, or do you think that's not how you should think about where the rates
I think you have to be cautious about that, in particular if you're talking about AI, about generative AI. So remember, in the short term, what's happening is we're building data centers everywhere, and that's actually putting pressure on all kinds of goods and services that go into building these things. So that's actually probably pushing inflation up at the margin. In addition, it probably raises the neutral rate. So in the near term, you're not looking at something that would immediately call for lower rates or that would be lowering inflation. Over time, though, sure, it can be if it's expanding potential output, which is what higher productivity does, then it actually can be. But I think it's an empirical question because it's really what is the demand growing faster or slower than the supply side, and I think we just don't know that answer ex ante going in. We'll just have to wait and see. Thank you very much.
Powell in the house. Everybody, what is going on? And welcome back. Welcome in. It's Jerome Powell. My OBS is reconnecting. Come on. There you go. We're back in. Okay. Sometimes it just actually, it happened at the end of the FOMC after about 2 hours of streaming. Good. We're back. So very excited to be here with you guys. I mean, obviously, what a crazy time for the market, for everybody, holding commodities, securities, crypto, oil prices. I think overall we see Jerome Powell saying that he's not going to cut anything unless, and until, this situation it changes, right? We're not going to get any cuts, guys. He only has to speak once more, and that's it. And it's coming in 6 weeks from now. 6 weeks from now. So now Kevin Warsh is the one who's going to be leading this powerful institution, the Federal Reserve. And I remind you guys that yesterday we broke $39 trillion in debt, right? What a big market cap. I want a cryptocurrency with $39 trillion in market cap. Come on. I want that. For reference, gold is $30 trillion market cap. Gold. $33 trillion gold, and we have 4.4 trillion NVIDIA, then 4.29 trillion silver, and we go all the way down and find BTC at $1.4742 trillion market cap. So what's going to happen? That in due time, someday in the future, we are going to have gold right here at the bottom of your screen, probably jumping all the way up to #1 place. Look, if it happens in my lifetime, that'll be awesome. But if it doesn't, that's okay too, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not rushing. I'm not going to be losing any sleep. I'm not going to be losing any health. I'm just going to continue DCAing, buy what I can afford losing. I mean, basically what my disclaimer says, right? Exercising my own understanding, and we're going to do fine. We're so early, and I'm so excited. Welcome, fam. Super happy to see you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us on X. Here's the link, guys. If you want the latest breaking stories on X, you can always find us here. We're also here on YouTube, as you can tell. And it's pretty fun, you know, all and everything that we found so far. On the question on whether I will continue to serve as the governor after my term ends and after the investigation is over, I have not made that decision yet. I will make the decision based on what I think is best for the institution and for the people we serve. So what it means is that he plans to stay as a governor of the Federal Reserve once the new chair comes in. Crazy stuff, man. I gotta tell you. Closing the poll right now. So when 1.7 thousand votes, XRP will go Nothing Burger. That's what won. Nothing Beautiful Burger with 38%. Up and up and up, 32%. Well, right now, the price, I will say, completely did the Nothing Burger. Nothing happened right now with a pause. It just, oh, look, 500, a lot of money out of the stock market today. $500 billion gone. That's a lot of money, brother. A lot of money. Yep, $39 trillion. There you have it, everybody. That's a lot of money. A lot of money. So, guys, there you have it. What a nice, powerful live stream. I want to say thank you so much for those who came in. Thank you for all the comments and for all the new members and my admins as well. We had a great time, guys. So, now for you who are here at the very, very, very end, some of the latest updates that we have for you is that in a few days from now, we're heading to Mexico City for a Bitunix. It's called, let me show you. I'm going to be talking actually. It's the Ultra Trading Conference Mexico. So it's going to happen by Reforma. I'm sure that some of you have been to Mexico City. So I'll be there, guys, at the Ultra Trading Conference. I'll be talking. First time that I'm actually going to go and, have a chance to give back and talk and reach out to a lot of the community. So I'm pretty excited for that. That's one of the big conferences. Now, I also want to take the chance that I have you here, Powell, right now. I'm not living. Powell is like, I'm not living. I want to take the chance right now because with BTCC, my team and I, they are telling me that instead of token 2049, right, that was supposed to happen in Dubai, now they are working for Miami F1 race. Miami F1 race that is at the beginning of May. So May 1st, May 2nd, May whatever. So Miami F1 race. What's going to happen is that we're going to have a competition, trading competition. So we're going to have the monthly XRP giveaways, right? The ones that we've been doing right now. You see the 4,000 XRP. I think for April, we may be able to do 3,000, 2,000, so to make the 4,000 special. But for May, we may do 3,000. And on top of that, there's going to be an F1 Miami race competition, which basically means that those who win it are going to come with me to the F1 race. So this is going live right now. Like I'm telling you the news, right? It's still not live yet for me. They're working on it. But once it's done, I'll tell you in one of my upcoming videos. So for those who are listening right now, if you ever wanted to go to an F1 race and see me and see the team behind the show, well, you might want to go ahead and give all the best you got, okay? F1 Miami race coming super nice. It's going to be great. May 2026. And maybe in summer 2026, we may go to other different conferences. My team is really working hard to put me in powerful places so I can talk to great people and we can expand our community. And of course, Token 2049 Singapore in September, October is going to be phenomenal. And I mean, I got to keep working hard. So I want to go there. I want to see some of you guys. So there's a lot of events coming up. And as you can tell right now, we had DC blockchain in Washington, right? So beautiful things happening, guys. And I just wanted to keep you in the know with the latest breaking stories. Okay. All right, guys. That being said, I appreciate everybody here so much. Thank you for everything that we've done so far. And big shout out to my sponsors. Before I leave, I want to give a big shout out to iTrustCapital, because for those who want to have a kind of like a more relaxed, long-term approach to crypto, this might be your case, right? And I mean, they are phenomenal. We have them for so long, and I just love how they break it down super easily, guys. When you sign up with my link, you get a $100 bonus, guys, and you decide whether you want an IRA, premium custody, treasury protection, you decide. So the link is down there, guys, if you want for sure to have a clue of what's going on. Also, because I do have great sponsors, right? Bitunix is one of my other sponsors, right, that I love, and I'm going to be seeing them, right, very, very, very soon. Here's my link. So link down below to Bitunix if you want to come and find another powerful trading platform to do your trading, get up to 10,000 welcome bonus. Like, look, sign up in just 1 minute and claim up to 10,000 in welcome bonus. That is amazing, guys. It's a lot of money. That is a lot of money, and you can take a look at the info right there. So really helps, really, really, really helps for those. And lastly, today I got my ASA paycheck, so pretty happy for that. ASA Miner is what I've been using daily. You've seen some of our updates, right? So pretty cool. And they just told me today that the interview with ASA Miner and Alcon Daily is gonna go live soon. So I'm so excited to watch it. I want to keep learning more. I want to just keep, supporting, and taking the risk that I can, because it is my money and I decide what to do. And as always, you always do your own research, and what works right now, sadly, in crypto and in the markets, in the future may change, right? So that's why people always exercise caution when investing. It is the way it is. That's how the world works, sadly. A lot of people were investing in so many great companies. Per se, Bitcoin in 2013, 2012, they bought a lot of it. And 13 years later, you don't know them. They just vanish from existence. And you wonder why? Well, because they became multi-billionaires. They are so rich that they don't need anyone's approval, right? But you also have other people who bought other projects. Sadly, they rug pulled, scam, Ponzi's, and they lost everything. So in crypto, you're going to have a lot of things, but always exercise caution, guys. And yeah, it's the beautiful thing about this industry, right? It gives you and it takes back. But with a lot of knowledge and years, things can get better as you become more informed. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. I'll keep you in the know. You take care. Be safe. Peace. Let's go, guys. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody. You got the whole deal. Peace.